All right, welcome to our session, City Shaping Fit for Purpose Environmental Plans. We are very excited to have you here as we talk about urban nature plans, net zero cities, and the Berlin Urban Nature Pact, and how these different initiatives are working with cities to help them align with different levels of sustainability governance. We have brought you together as ICLA Europe. I have quite a few of my colleagues here with us. I'm not going to introduce all of them, but you will have a moment to get to know them when we speak later in breakout groups or as they help me moderate today. I'm Cassia Rudd. I work at ICLA Europe in Freiburg, Germany, and I lead communications for the biodiversity and nature-based solutions team. You can go to the next slide. So today we're going to have a very brief introduction, a little bit of information on why we're here and the sort of policies we're helping cities align with. Then you are going to get to meet and greet three cities. We have Quito, Ecuador, Utrecht, Netherlands, and Paris, France. And after these cities have given you a little bit of insight into their local policy context and the work that they are doing in the realm of nature-based solutions, we are going to break out into small group discussions. We are going to have the opportunity to talk about the role of finance in NBS, stakeholder engagement, and also things like monitoring and reporting. While you can only choose one breakout group, do not fret because we will have a plenary where everybody gets to report back and ask a few questions and learn a little bit about the conversations that were had in the other groups. Then my colleague Sarah Arfine is going to help you take a moment to reflect on what you've talked about and think about what you might want the future to look like. Now that we've talked about the policies that are in place right now, how cities are trying to align the national, international, and local levels, what do we hope will happen in the next 50 or so years? And then we will close, and we will also give you some information on how to stay in touch. Next slide, please. So you're going to hear a lot from the cities themselves. So I'm not going to go super in depth into who we are and what we're working on, but I did want to give you a really brief introduction into the projects that are represented here. So first of all, we have the Urban Nature Plans project, Urban Nature Plans Plus. This is a Horizon Europe project that is helping cities to create urban nature plans. This is very Europe focused, but it is a tool for aligning different levels of policy, as we said, the reason why we're here at the local level by really mapping what are the plans that you already have, what is the work that you are already doing, and how can that help you get where you want to go. So this is really tied to the nature restoration regulation, which requires that cities by 2030 have steps in place to achieve no net loss in green space or tree canopy. Paris is going to talk to you about their urban nature plan work. Then we also have Net Zero Cities, and this is an initiative that is helping cities to create climate city contracts. So they're working with cities to overcome current structural, institutional, and cultural barriers in order to achieve climate neutrality by 2030. And the Climate City Contract is a governance innovation tool that helps them work together, the cities work together within the city to accelerate transformative action and reach climate neutrality by 2030. And you are going to hear about this a little bit from Utrecht. And then we also have at the global level, so the nature restoration regulation was Europe level, climate city contracts are more city level, and then the nationally determined contributions are national, but also happening worldwide. And this came directly out of the Paris Agreement. And these are climate action plans that countries submit as part of the Paris Agreement that outline their commitments to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and adapting to climate change. So you can imagine that one city might be working to fulfill the obligations of the Nature Restoration Regulation. They might be working to write a climate city contract, and they're also trying to align with the nationally determined contributions. And the Berlin Urban Nature Pact is another global initiative that is helping cities do this work and really outline specific biodiversity targets that they're trying to reach and think about how they can get there. And I have my colleagues, Paule here and Sarah Arfin as well, who are very aware of the Berlin Urban Nature Pact. And this is something that Utrecht is also working on. And Quito actually fits into a project that has already ended, Clever Cities, but their work is really, really similar to the work that we're doing in urban nature plans. And so that's part of why we invited them. Next slide, please. So with this, I'm going to hand it over to Utrecht, and you are welcome to put questions in the chat, and we will do our best to keep an eye on that as we move forward with our session.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for this introduction, Kasia. Utrecht, 5 minutes with a focus on green, maybe much more than net zero. So the question I try to answer is, how much are we working in Utrecht as a result of national or European legislation, and what comes from our own ambitions? And if you see the subtitle, there's a lot of room for ambitions. I think that's the main takeaway. And there's a lot of spatial challenges for fitting in green adaptation measures and biodiversity. Next one. Very quickly, the 4th largest city in the Netherlands, and sort of right in the middle with 350,000 inhabitants, which is, well, on a global scale, really small. But we are working on that. Another 100,000 inhabitants expected in the next 20 to 30 years. So really fast growing city, which is old Roman times. This is where the Roman Empire ended. But it's also modern with industry, universities, and not only fast growing, but also very green. But keeping it green is the big challenge. Next. Please. Some of the legislation that comes from our own ambition. We have a green structure plan, which is, I suppose, our urban nature plan, but it's pretty old. First originated in 2007, updated in 2018. Spatial strategy, 10-minute city. Which is about the quantity. In the end, it's about how do we structure, how much green do we need in order to have a city that is sufficiently green for the well-being of people and animals and plants in the city, which is a huge challenge in order to fit it in the city. And that's the discussion that we are having right now. Okay, let's go to the third one. Because the third one is about quality, the Utrecht species list, which is mainly focused on protection. It's also a couple of years old. And together with this, with the structuring document, this is also guiding development in it, guiding the monitoring of this fast developing city. So all these documents describe our green ambition in the city, and it works rather well. One of the main caveats is that they are not strongly prescribed. They are not obligatory on the deepest level. So there's always room to wiggle out of it in the developing city. Next slide, please. Quickly, National Environmental Plan. On the structural level, we now have nothing, and in the future also, I don't envisage something that is guiding us. It is really on our own ambition that we are structuring green in our city and making these urban nature plans. Second column, quantity. Covenants on climate adaptation. They are sort of guiding our work on how green it needs to be in order to provide enough shade during heat waves, and how green it needs to be in order to have enough water runoff. But it's not strong. In the future, there, in terms of quantity, in terms of satisfying levels of green, the EU Nature Restoration Regulation will trickle down to what we need to do in the cities. And that will be a strong push to have enough green in the city. Third, quality. There, we have national legislation that guides our actions. We have flora and fauna protection, or the nature law. And we have, of course, the EU legislation on birds and habitats and the water directive. That trickles down to what we do in the city. And in the future, also in terms of quantity, think of habitats, think of pollinators. The EU Nature Restoration Regulation will probably also guide our actions. But again, I think the takeaway from this presentation will be that in the Netherlands, cities mainly define their own ambitions in terms of greening, climate adaptation, and the quality of green, say biodiversity. Next slide, please. An example, I will go through this complex matter in 1 minute or so. Species management plan. Cities have always been the home for animals. Animals live not only in the trees and the green around us, but they live in our buildings. And they can only do that if they find the entrance and if they find the space within these buildings, like a roof tile, or like the area between the inner and outer wall for birds and bats. Uh, National legislation obliges us to protect these species. But in a developing city and in a city that wants to go through an energy transition by isolating buildings, this is a huge problem, because we risk, by developing our city and making our houses warmer through isolation, we lose all the animals. That is a real risk. So the species management plan to the rescue. Next slide, please. What is the goal? The goal is that all the users, all the people that have projects and work on their buildings in the city, that they work conform the nature protection law. So they, and that is a huge challenge. What does it need to achieve? A favorable conservation status of birds and bats in our city. The ultimate urban nature is the birds and the bats that live in our city. They are the iconic species. But in terms of condition, the next slide, what do we need to do for that? We need to have a lot of information. Now, everyone that does a project in a city needs to do their own investigation, a quick scan, and maybe follow up research on what species live in my building before they can actually make a plan to isolate a wall, renovate a roof, tear the building down and build a new one. They have to do a lot of ecological research. The species management plan does that in one go, but it requires a lot of ecological capacity. Next slide, and almost the last one. So this is what you see here, and I don't know if all the people attending the seminar are familiar with this. On the left and on the right, you see in this modern building built-in a room for animals, for swifts, for sparrows, and on the right it's for bats. This is what the future will look like. And then if I go to the next slide, and which is the last one, if we are looking at what we're doing in Utrecht, it's not just making more square meters, not just the spatial challenges of nature in the city, but it's creating habitats for species and really understanding what even the ultimate city dweller, the house sparrow, needs. And we are just starting to develop our city with the needs of these animals and plants in mind. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for your presentation on the work in Utrecht. And as I said before in the chat, if you have questions, please write them in the chat. We will do our best to track this and get back to you. And as we're a little bit behind schedule, we need to move on directly to Paris. So that would just be the next slide.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cassia. And well, nice to meet you, everybody. I'm really excited to talk to you about our new strategy. Well, new. It's actually not that new. That's what I'm hoping to show you. Transforming Paris into a garden city. I called it retrofitting an ultra-dense city because, next slide, please, Kasia. You'll see that Paris is essentially now a city center. We are a relatively small city for a capital city, so much smaller in terms of territory than London or Rome or Berlin, our neighbors. And as you can see on the map in the right corner, we are basically a city center with two woods on both sides and the River Seine crossing the city. I will be talking today about Paris and Paris only and not the greater metropolis. Next slide, please. We have completely transformed all of our strategies during the 2020-2026 mandate, starting with the climate change strategy and the local urban master plan. We called it bioclimatic. And those two overarching plans now are completely coherent with all of the strategies, the resiliency, the environmental health, the tree strategies, the sponge city strategy, the public tender strategy. All of these plans have been rethought to take into account how we want the city to transform, adapting to climate change, and focusing both on mitigation and adaptation. Yeah, I will not go into too much details. Next slide, please. I wanted to show you super quickly what urban nature has meant for Paris. It has been changing really fast, and we did it in two different ways. We did it in very strategic and symbolic projects that really gave you this wow effect, and hoping that it would, tell the story enough to local citizens that they would support us to do the more mundane greening. So today I started with the mundane greening, which is this transformation of what we called a school street. Basically, you cut off traffic from cars at both ends of a relatively small street in front of a school, and you green about 1/3 of it. The rest is large enough for emergency services to pass if need be. And you recreate a completely different atmosphere. Kids can play, parents and teachers can talk to each other, social interactions can happen, and pollution levels drop immensely. We have numbers for this, and it's quite impressive. Next slide, please. We also conducted some massive projects. My department is really, really proud of this one because it's the Catalan Square used to be essentially a roundabout. It's just behind one of the main stations. And we transformed it in less than 2 years into an urban forest. Obviously, it's very young because it was inaugurated about a year ago. But we are hoping that it will really transform the landscape for the next, it will be maybe for the next 20 to 60 years, hopefully. And it creates a urban nature island. It has an important cooling effect, and obviously we are hoping for it to become a biodiversity hotspot. We have good, encouraging signs, but it's only been a year, so it's a little bit early to say. Next slide, please. I will be focusing in the breakout rooms on stakeholder engagement, and I wanted to show you that a city can do a lot when it comes to reaching out to its citizens, but it cannot do it alone. So I will not go into all of the details, but basically we have set up a lot of different houses or public services, nature public services, to engage with our citizens and get them excited about nature in a really big city where people are a little bit disconnected most of the time. They can engage into community gardens or greening permits if they want to green in the streets. They are more than welcome to join us for citizen sciences projects. And they can also take up missions on a platform that gives you so many different things that you can do. It's called Agir pour Paris, which means acting for Paris, getting involved. And you can participate into a cleanup in the woods or get education about the different types of flowers and species you'll find, and always, make yourself useful. Obviously, we also have a strong social platforms presence, etc. Next slide, please. But there's more than you can do than just, getting information. The idea was really for citizens to co-decide and to take action into their own hands. So there's another platform that's called Deciding for Paris, where we host all of our public consultations and participatory budgeting campaigns. It actually closed, the participatory budget closed yesterday, and we are hoping for good results when it comes to green spaces. There's also a tree charter that is basically just good management principles that we try to have large private landowners to sign. So we kind of share the basic principles of how to manage our trees and how to be biodiversity prone, let's say. Same idea for businesses. Some businesses have signed this pact for climate action and biodiversity. It's basically a peer group. The city is just sitting there as one of them, but not really more than this. And they're brainstorming ideas, and every single year they have to prove that they actually engage into very concrete and critical actions. And if not, they vote among themselves and kick out uh, the bad students, let's say, from the group. And actually, it did happen, and it's quite a dynamic and fun group. And finally, obviously, we have regulatory requirements. I talked to you about revising the urban master plan. That was a huge effort. But also, we are trying to coach condominiums to green their courtyards. So we pay for study fees and some of the works because there's not a single space that is too small to take action. Paris is so dense that we have to take every single opportunity we can get. Public land, yes. Public buildings, yes. But also private land, private buildings. We cannot, have the city do everything on its own because it's just not enough. Next slide, please. Yes, I just wanted to show you that nobody was expecting Paris 20 years ago to be at the forefront of climate change adaptation. Just because everybody loves the city how it is. It's beautiful, it's romantic, and people don't want it to change. But we thought that if we could prove that a city such as ours could take action and still be livable, but actually increase the quality of life for residents, maybe it would inspire our government, it would inspire our fellow cities to take action. Just because we obviously did not do this at all on our own. We were so inspired by different cities, and especially some that are present in the chat. And we joined various networks, obviously eClay, and we participated in research projects such as Horizon Europe projects. But more than this, it was the conference today is Daring City. We had to dare. And sometimes you'll be facing a lot of backlash and a lot of criticism. But for people who have actually been to Paris, just remember that next to the River Seine, it was a highway once, and now it's a walkable path. And I don't think a lot of people would want to revert to a highway. And we had so much fighting to get this done. So sometimes when you dream big, it's difficult in the beginning, but it's really worth it. That's what I wanted to tell you. And I can't wait to hear your stories in the breakout room. Thank you.
Super. Thanks so much, Celeste. And in the interest of time, I'm going to hand it straight off to Quito. And please just keep putting your questions in the chat. We're keeping note of them.
Okay, thanks, Cassia. Happy to be with you today. I'm Nicolas Salmon. I'm pleased to join, and thanks for the invitation and to speak about what's happening in Quito and more largely in Latin American cities. Next slide, please. So we are Yes Innovation. We are urban planners actually. So we're a private company based in Quito for 10 years now, and we are working in the different cities in Ecuador and also in other cities in Latin America, and we are trying to introduce nature in the city, considering the different contexts we have in the country. Well, Quito is located in the mountains, very at a very high level with a specific climate, but we also have very different climates in the country, so that we have to manage many different climate transitions in all those contexts. Next slide, please. So I will tell you the story in Quito, which is a bit particular. You may have heard about this judgment happening last year for the river, one of the river crossing Quito, the Machangara. Actually, it was the second judgment. The first one occurred in 2022. And you may know that in Ecuador, we have a constitution saying that nature has rights, and so those rights can be defended. Up to now, it was not applied, not at all. But some associations, some guys from the civil society use this part of the constitution to defend the Machangara rivers and previously the Monjas River, and it gave the opportunity, well, or it obliged the city somehow to develop a set of new tools and new rules for respecting nature, and especially the blue network in the city. It's not only about a specific area of the river. It's true that it was based on erosion issues, but it's the whole judgment is asking the city to solve the whole water cycle in the city in terms of pollution, but also in terms of discharge. No, and most of the discharge are coming from the rain. So it's led the way to new documents. Next slide, please. And new rules. The main of the stronger of those rules is this ordinance, the green-blue ordinance, which is now ruling all the green areas, the natural areas in the city, and opening I mean, new actions. Now, and of course, Quito has other plans like a resilience plan, climate action plans, land use plans, and so on. And in those documents, we add some mentions about nature and natural areas and nature-based solutions, but it was not very strong, no, actually, even if some of those documents are quite recent. But with the green-blue ordinance, it's changed quite a lot. Next slide, please. The other side of the context is that regionally in Latin America, we have more and more technical publications about how nature can bring solutions in cities especially for climate adaptation. And it also helped a lot because now we see that people are very much aware. I mean, people in the cities, technicians in the cities are very much aware of what can be done with nature-based solutions, especially, and green infrastructure. Next slide, please. So all these contexts led us to developing this guide that actually we've been developing with the City of Quito in the framework of Clever Cities, Horizon 2020 project, and sharing with other cities, mainly in Europe, sharing with other initiatives, small or medium one in Quito or in other cities in Latin America. We could develop this first guidance, which can be assimilated to a urban nature plan, giving solutions and methodologies to introduce nature in the city. Next slide, please. So yeah, I don't go into details. Next slide, please, because the time is short. But you can download. You see the QR code. You can download or look for a guide for implementing NBS in Quito, and you will find it. And we try to be pragmatical with some, suggestions like that for urban planners in the city, either in the private sector or the public sector, to implement nature. Next slide. And now Quito has launched since last year many initiatives to finance some private or semi-private initiatives for nature. It works quite well, and they are also planning to develop a green infrastructure plan in the city. It was launched this year and was blocked, so it should be restart again. Next slide, please. And I wanted to say a few words as we will talk about finance in the next breakout room, and how we observe financing nature in cities in the whole region, not only in Quito. So we see that most of the funding is coming from the traditional bank credit. Bank credit means in Latin America that it comes from international development banks. And those are catching especially new fundings, and part of these fundings are coming from the climate fundings, and they are proposed in terms of credits. But we still see many difficulties for local cities to understand how those climate financing are working. And there is really huge amounts of money which are available, especially for credits. No, it's not free money. But still there is a big gap between the requirements from those financing schemes and the realities of the project proposed by the city. So really a lot to work on in this way, and there are various projects in the country to try to tackle with these gaps. Next slide, please. We see also some specific alternative fundings. No, for example, sponsorship agreements, and Quito was the pioneer in the country with a specific ordinance dedicated to that. You can see, for example, a park in the city of Quito, which is financed by Kia, the fashion brand. Next slide, please. There are also some initiatives from the corporate social responsibility, which is growing quite a lot. And for example, partners in Lima, in Peru, Ciudad Viva are working quite a lot on nature project in the city of Lima and other cities in Peru, based on corporate social responsibility from the big private players in the city. Next slide, please. Other type of initiative that we see in the country is the debt swapped, and it leads to huge projects. But you see this one in Galapagos. There was another one in the Amazonian area, but still reserved to large protected areas and not really to the city. So we have to think about that. Next slide, please. Another way to fund nature is through carbon and biodiversity bonds. It's happening also in Ecuador, but not in the cities so far, because the level of CO2 emissions are still quite low in the level that we can diminish now, are still quite low in the cities. And the last slide, please. And I wanted to add with this example, because we have been working with those guys. They are not in Ecuador, they are in Guatemala, but it's very interesting context and very interesting example. Those guys from Funda Eco, which is an NGO in Guatemala City. And they are working in creating urban parks. They have been working in creating natural parks in the whole country since the 90s. And they transfer their know-how in creating urban parks. So they used especially the urban ravines. Guatemala City is full of urban ravines, like many cities in Latin America. And they use those small areas to give a new possibility for the people living there to access to green. And there are many. So they implemented like 20 parks so far, and they are presenting a new project to implement 15 more. Some of them are very small, but they are very creative in terms of economic models to finance them, including and this is also available for private initiatives. Part of those parks, they buy the land and they open the parks to the public with specific private models trying to sell specific services. So maybe that's something we can talk about in the breakout room. I'm ending with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentations, dear speakers. It was very interesting stories, absolutely beautiful cities, and I love Celeste's invitation to dream big. I think it's extremely important, and your examples show how to dream big, despite challenges at times. I see a hand raised, but unfortunately we don't have time for questions at the moment. We're really running late, so we're going to have to continue our conversation in the breakout rooms. Each one is led by one of our presenters. Nicola will lead the room on financing, Celeste will lead the room on stakeholder engagement, and Albin will lead the room on monitoring. See you later in the plenary. Hi everyone, I spoke just briefly before, but I didn't introduce myself. My name is Paula Lepori. I'm a senior expert on biodiversity and nature-based solutions at ICLE Europe, and I lead our team's work on policy and advocacy. We have started this session hearing about the experience of 3 cities in shaping their environmental plans. These are 3 very different cities. We had an ultra-dense European capital, we had a populous and fast-growing South American city, and a smaller but still very dynamic and densely populated Dutch city. They told their stories and then they led the breakout room discussions on 3 key topics. The age-old question, how do we pay for this? The very pertinent question about how meaningful stakeholder engagement shapes the planning process and its outcomes, and the vital role of monitoring. How do we measure results? And I'd like to hear from our speakers the key takeaway messages from this conversation. So I will start maybe with Nicola and hear about the financing breakout room.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. We were a few people, but the discussion was very interesting. No? So thanks for the participants and mainly people from Africa, no, sharing experience from South Africa, from Ghana, and we talked about some existing fundings, and now the Just Energy Transitions funding was mentioned, no, for South Africa, or some. I mean, cooperation like the Covenant of Mayor, which was mentioned by Kofi from Ghana, and then we focused on PPPs, no, on public-private partnerships and how those can be used as a mechanism, no, to finance things. And we had example from Asani, which is working the waste management sector, and was mentioning the extended producer responsibility, no, which is quite used in the management sector and even well regulated, let's say, in some countries, and it opens the possibility to fund in this case recycling project, you know, and so and we were talking about a similar experience with the social labor plans in South Africa, with mining companies affecting some lands somehow, and which were investing as a compensation scheme in schools and parks and so far. And we were talking about the possibility to explore this kind of mechanism to finance those projects which are difficult to finance. We also been talking about typically nature conservation or nature regeneration project in cities where there is no income, no, to sustain, let's say, a traditional PPP approach. But then looking at this responsibility concept, it opens the possibility to finance those projects. So it's probably something that we could explore. So thanks. I hope I didn't forget anything, and thanks to the participants for those nice ideas and this nice discussion.
Thank you, Nicola. That was perfect. Nice and brief. And personally, I really appreciated hearing from, I have a pretty much European perspective, so I'm always happy to hear from other regions that face different struggles and how they tackle them. I will ask Celeste now to tell us about their conversation in the stakeholder engagement room. Celeste, please.
I really admired Nicola's ability. Okay, we talked about how it is not so always easy to keep at the same time efficiency and co-creation, participation, stakeholder engagement on the other hand. So we talked about how to involve people internally in your organization, but also outside, how to get people on board when they are reluctant, when they are not yet convinced of the emergency to act or of the technical solution to be implemented. We talked about, what did we talk about again? I explained basically how Paris has been shifting from a very, very top-down type of administration for 250 years, with a strong central administration that thinks it knows best and does everything on its own, to really trying to open up to other levels of government, to open up to academics and wider knowledge, and obviously to open up to citizens and a civil society, and how it takes time and energy and compassion and failures and attempts to do it successfully, because it's like a mind shift basically applied to NBS, but it could be applied to a lot of other public policies. So this is what we talked about. Yeah, I think that covers it more or less.
Thank you very much, Celeste. The last point is very important, the change in mindset, how institutions actually need a cultural shift in order to be able to harness the power of stakeholder engagement in a efficient way. But let's move on to the next speaker. Albin, you discussed monitoring indicators and reporting.
Yeah, and not just indicators. We immediately went into the social impacts of these indicators. So we hardly started with creating nature-based solutions, and now we want to know whether they work. Well, that's did we come up with the ultimate solution? Not yet, but I think some interesting points were made. Yeah, of course, we need to end up with a hybrid solution on monitoring. The first is quantitative data, probably from remote sensing or other census methods, maybe from the city's own organizations. How many trees, how many square meters, how much water, and then you dive into what kind of quality does that represent, and then you probably need to get your feet on the ground and start counting plants and insects. And how do you do that? It costs a lot of money. Remote sensing itself costs a lot of money, but on the ground it's even more difficult. And then is that the impact that you want? Citizen science helps. It's, well, at least also from the Dutch experience, there's a lot of data gathered. But another thing is, of course, getting people involved. Now, just in terms of engagement, making the nature-based solutions, but also describing and experiencing the outputs of nature-based solutions. One example was mentioned that local people in local communities, if they stop using words for certain species, that probably means that the species was lost in that area. Well, it's the other way around as well. If you engage people and create a common narrative about what's happening in these green areas and these nature-based solutions, children, not last and not least, will start using the words for species that they forgot about or never learned about. So that's the other way around. And we need to create a narrative first, maybe, before we start counting species. And last but not least, we can collect a whole lot of data, but of course we need to share this data as well. Sharing the data, the raw data, but also the stories that come out of it, because data sharing is also part of storytelling about greening our cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Albina. We'll pick up on this last thing that you said, because one of the things that I personally struggle with is the tension when it comes to data between comparability and the flexibility that we need to account for different capacities and resources in terms of gathering the data and analyzing it. But I don't want to steal time from the conversation. I'm going to ask the organizers if I still have 2 minutes to ask if anybody in the room has anything else to add to the conversation, any, I don't know, extra comment or unresolved questions that you would like to raise at this point. I don't see any hands up.
Nahala?
Yes?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi, Susan. Actually, I do like in the monitoring to keep the hard copy of the data, because during the disaster, we do have the big issues regarding power off, loss of sometimes the system of the networking, or even sometimes like for us now under the war situations, we have a huge damage of the laptops. We lost all our data. Some of it wasn't saved in the drive, you know. So I think hard copy, it should be in place with the monitoring every place. And thank you for watching and attending with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this very important note. It's you're absolutely right, and we see more and more with disasters, but also cyber attacks, the risks of relying too much on our laptops. Thank you for the great discussion. Now I'll give the word to my colleague Sarah for the futuring activity. I've never done anything like that before, so I'm quite curious and excited about it. And over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Paula. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So I'm Sarah. I'm one of the communications experts at ICLE Europe. And in the next 10 minutes or so, I'll be walking you through this featuring activity Paula mentioned, which I feel we're pretty well primed for now. So it's going to be straightforward, or as straightforward as the future can be. So we want to look ahead with you all and reflect on the evolution of our cities in relation to the climate and biodiversity agenda. So for that, we're going to do this exercise, which was inspired by the future screenshots methodology by Mushan Zeraviv. And we'll all take a minute to reflect on and describe a future scenario. So this could be something that appeals to you and you may wish to see come true, or maybe it could be something that you don't want to happen. And we'll generate these snapshots from futures which capture climate or biodiversity or urban development related scenarios. And the scenario can be before or after a transitional event that triggers some kind of change, big or small. So when you look at the template, if we could please add everything to the chat now. Here you go. Thank you. You'll see my example, which relates to urban food sources. And of course, the template is in view only right now. So when you download it, you should be able to edit the fields. Something important to note, you'll only need to do one kind of format, not all three of the cards. And you'll be able to download them in a Power or like as a slideshow. The instructions are on the screen, I think. So if you're in the template already, you'll see that I indicated the event at the top to kind of say where the future fragment is on the timeline. So for my example, my event was that my city park was designating a foraging area, and my scenario, which is underneath that, occurs after the event. So in brackets, it says after. And in my scenario, I'm describing how I was able to go foraging there and get mushrooms for my supper. So kind of an example on the like very basic micro level, but maybe you want to consider the larger machinery behind it all. Let your imagination loose, think about social cultural implications, environmental impacts, political ramifications, values, relationships, systems, what have you. So we have, I would say, the next 5 minutes to maybe do some thinking and reflection. And if we have a minute or two for people to present their cards, we'll do that. But otherwise, as it says in the chat, if you're okay for us to use your card later for promotion, please save them to the folder we've linked or send them to me via email. It'll all be anonymous. Okay, so let the writing commence. We'll wait 5 minutes. Okay, so I think that we can come back to the plenary, and if anyone wants to talk about what their reflections were during this time, even if you weren't able to kind of figuratively put pen to paper and fill out the cards, if there was a reflection that occurred to you and you just want to share with the group, something about a future in your city that you'd like to see happen or want to prevent from happening. Did anything come up for anybody?
If I can, this is Catherine Alexander in Spokane. I love the exercise. I'd not experienced this before. I wasn't able to get very far, but what it prompted me, I can see it actually as almost a planning, begin with the end in mind kind of exercise, where by seeing this process, then I can go back and talk to people about this as though was coming into existence kind of thing. So the focus for me was creating a small Miyawaki forest, which takes 3 years to grow, but can have all these impacts. So thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Catherine. Really appreciate that. Yeah, and I think that was kind of the objective, is to think of the future and work backwards from there, like an active political imagination. Would anyone else like to add to that? Otherwise, you can also always share your cards with us later on. You can add them to the folder, like I said, or just email them straight to me. LB?
Yeah, one remark. I think if you're getting into the mood, and that might take a few minutes.
Yeah.
I think we all have a vision of what this nature inclusive city looks like and what experiences we want to have there. I think this is a brilliant exercise. It needs to get into people's heads. I think so. I encourage people to take a look at it. Brilliant. I will email you my example.
Perfect. I look forward to that, Alvin. Thanks so much. And Cassia, I see you put yours in the chat too. Okay, your event is my city put funding aside to help people turn their lawns into wildlife meadows, and your scenario happens after. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to talk about it, Cassia?
Sure, I don't mind. I wanted to give other people the opportunity to talk if they wanted to. But basically, where I'm from in Oregon, we have um, soil and water conservation districts. And because Portland is super, super urban, they do a lot of work with people at home, whether they're renters or homeowners. And when I moved to Germany, they were just starting to get a really cool program started to advise locals on their yards. And so I was just thinking about how once there was funding available to not just inform people about why wildlife meadows are so good, but also enable them to do it, how different the flora and fauna in the yard become, and how I can imagine that you would hear a lot more birds and a lot more insects, and how lovely that would be. So that was my event. I would love to have a loud wildlife full yard.
Sounds idyllic. Yeah. Maybe that's even a great note to take us out on, Cassia.
Super. So I will take over again. I think we have a few more slides that we can show after the activity, just with a little bit of contact information. But we did want to say thank you to all of our speakers. We're really grateful that you took the time to share your experiences, the unique things that are happening in your towns, how you are using these different tools that we mentioned at the beginning to align sometimes very different policies and strategies coming from different levels of governance with different degrees of legal bindingness. So thank you so much. We've been taking notes. We will write an article about this. So if you feel that you missed anything because you had technical difficulties or what have you, please watch the Network Nature channel, because that is one of the places that will publish it, but also ICLA Europe. And if you have a question that wasn't answered, you can write us. Our emails are right here, and we would be super happy to answer any of your questions, connect you with any resources. And just thanks again on behalf of ICLA Europe, on behalf of our speakers and the different projects that we're involved in, for the time that you took to join us today.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cassia.